I don't see her.
Okay, so we are live streaming on YouTube, and I'm gonna now start recording here on Zoom. And I'm gonna keep everybody muted. Okay, so we are live streaming on YouTube. All right, almost all the technical things taken care of. Okay, excellent. Yay. So, welcome. So, my name is Martha Alter Hines, and welcome to everybody here live on Zoom, everybody live watching on YouTube. And if you happen to be watching live on YouTube and you want to join on Zoom, you can through the free community on my website, livingtheonelight.com. But also enjoy either location, both, and feel free to put in the chat of either YouTube or here in Zoom where you are in the world, and any full moon blessings, because we happen to be recording this literally precisely at the time that the full moon is exact. It's amazing timing. So this is today, we're recording this on July 10th, 2025, and it happens to be the exact full moon in Capricorn with the sun in Cancer. And this is so beautiful because we're here today with Alexandra Simson, who is a member of this community, a storyteller based in the UK. And she's going to be sharing with us the story of the seal hunter, which is a traditional story from Scotland. And I'm going to hand it to Alexandra in a second. But so Alexandra reached out to me because she saw the interview that I did with the Scottish storyteller Cara Silversmith, who is amazing, and I highly recommend that interview if you haven't seen it. I really, really love Cara, and Alexandra said, "Wait." So Cara mentioned the seal hunter story in the interview I did with her, but Cara told a different Scottish story in the actual interview. And then Alexandra said, hey, hang on a second. Actually, that's one of the stories I tell, the seal hunter one. And I would love to just come and share that with this community. And so here we are. It's so perfect. And yeah, so welcome, Alexandra. Thank you so much for bringing yourself to this and showing up as you, which is basically I think the point is that's exactly what we're all doing, right? Whether or not we're live on YouTube or whatever it is, we just that's what we're here to do is show up in who we are and bring our gifts, and you're doing it. So thank you. Welcome. Do you want to say just a brief thing before I help us drop in and then fully hand it to you? Do you want to say who you are?
Just thank you, Martha. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for agreeing for me to come and share what I do. And just really lovely to be here with you and the community. Yeah, doing what I love. And it's a full moon, so yeah,
And it was
feels
your
good.
yeah, it was your suggestion to do it on this full moon with this, which is perfect. Awesome. Yeah, so just to give the lay of the land of what we're going to be doing today, first I'm going to help us just drop into the energetic of this full moon. If you happen to be watching this in the future, I always feel like the moment that we're recording is like the astrology of that moment is like a medicine, like almost like a flower essence, so I feel like it's like a medicine of that energy of the moment that can be relevant anytime. Um, and of course, the story itself and this gathering itself is a vibration and a medicine in and of itself. So relevant anytime, even if this is years down the line that you're seeing this video. And then I'm going to hand to Alexandra. She's going to tell us the story. We might have a bit of a dialogue and a conversation as well. And at the end, if it feels right, we're going to also maybe open it up to you guys here live on Zoom to share a bit. I will attempt to sort of monitor the comments on YouTube. If you're live on YouTube, I will definitely read the comments at some point, but I will be trying to do it while Alexandra is talking. And if that doesn't work, I'll read them later. But for sure, uh, yeah, we feel your presence and you are part of it. Again, if you're here live now or anytime. Um, so yeah, why don't we first all just drop into this moment, wherever we are in the world, this moment that we happen to be live is exactly when the full moon is becoming the most full it does. And so it's so beautiful. So yeah, we're all sharing in that, right? Wherever we are in the world, we're all over the world. We're all part of Gaia. We all are Gaia. And we all have the same moon of Gaia, which is beautiful, uniting. And we all have the same star that we call our sun. And at the time of this full moon, any full moon is when the moon and the sun are, in a sense, holding the earth between them. So right now, the sun is in the sign of Cancer, which is so much often about oceans and water and our emotional being, that seashell quality, like being inside a seashell, feeling the rhythm of the waves. And today we're going to be with Seal Hunter Story. It's absolutely perfect. And then the moon is on the other side of the earth, holding us in the sign of Capricorn and in the constellation of Sagittarius, the archer, actually also. But then that Capricorn energy really supporting us to feel our inner elder, the reality that we are the wisdom of existence, our earth and sun are 4.5 billion years old. Our moon is incredibly ancient also, and our beings are all ancient. And we have that, we are that wisdom of infinity, of ancientness. And these beings of this story do too. The oceans do, the seals certainly do. And we are all of it. So we can take a moment to just take a long, slow, deep breath and drop in fully to our Earth Gaia bodies, beautiful masterpieces of the divine as Earth. We can feel that light of our own inner golden seed in the back of our heart and the light codes igniting and emanating from that place inside of us and reconnecting with the light grid of everything, which includes ocean, land, every type of animal, plant, rock, the moon, the sun, all the stars, all the planets throughout all of time and all of space, and that great ocean or great womb of the cosmos, of existence. We are held and we are all of it. And we can feel ourselves coming into a massive, collective, worldwide sacred circle, sacred space together. We can take a moment to deeply honor and bow to our own inner child, our own inner wise self, both. We can feel how we are both and all of it. We can feel our inner child telling these stories and reminding our inner elder of the magic and innocence and vulnerability of ourselves, of life. And we can feel our inner elder holding our inner child listening deeply, and also helping our inner child to feel safe and reminded of the ancientness that we are, in addition to the innocence and the newness that we always are. And then we can take a moment to bow to that inner child and inner elder of every single being in this sacred circle, this sacred space, everybody here live and everybody watching the recording anytime in the future. We are all equally beautiful, valued, valuable, precious, cherished, needed. And then we can feel ourselves again connect in with the sacred circle and set the intention that I always set, which is that this time together serves only each of our absolute radical highest good and the highest good of the all that is. And so it is. Amen. Thank you all again so much for being here. So, Alexandra, does your instinct say, would you prefer to just go straight into the story from there? Or do you want to have a little conversation? Where's your soul leading you?
Into the story.
That's what I thought. That's what I was feeling. Go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, just relax, everybody, enjoy. Um, and when the story comes to a close, what I normally do is I usually ring some bells as we cross the threshold into the realm of our imagination and story. And I usually ring the bells at the end of the story. Again, that threshold back. So just before we begin and at the end, just imagine the sound of a bell, something soothing and that resonates with you. And then we'll hold that space just quiet, really, for a minute or so that people can really just feel the story land. And then we'll take it from there. But we won't be in a massive hurry to start whirling that big brain of ours up again. So for now, yeah, just take a deep breath. Imagine that bell. Once, a long, long time ago, on the far northern coast of Scotland, there was a bay, a horseshoe-shaped bay. There were high cliffs at the back of that bay that rose up and up, up and up the steep cliffs until it came to a grassy verge. And on that cliff top there stood a white, stone-washed cottage. It was summertime, and the heather was in full bloom, casting its purple colours across the landscape. A man lived in that cottage. His name was Duncan. He had lived there all his life. He had been born there. His father too before him, and his father before him. He'd lived there in that place for all of time, it seemed. Duncan had inherited some things from his father and his grandfather. These weren't ordinary things, these were tools. tools to help him carry out his trade. The first was a silver whistle, and he would play the whistle. The whistle summoned seals. It called them to him. There are ancient songs and vocabels that share how our voices, our sounds, our vocals can call the beings of this world and even the beings beyond this world into our realm. And this silver whistle was one of those things. The second thing that he had inherited was a bone-handled knife. Both these possessions had been handed down through the generations. You see, Duncan was a hunter. He was a seal hunter. He spent his days hunting and killing seals. The whistle would summon them, and then the knife. And after the deed was done, he would then use the knife with dexterity, with precision. He would skin the animals, and he would turn those skins into useful items. Rivlins were waterproof trousers that the men wore, and then there were small purses that he also fashioned and made from the skins. These were for the ladies to carry their coins in. No part of the animal was wasted. No part of the seal was wasted. This was his life. This was his trade. It's what his father had done before him. It's what his grandfather had done before him. He did not question it. He just did it. And he lived alone. One day, a beautiful morning, the sky was clear and blue. And he woke early, and he knew that this was a day when he would go hunting. So after he had eaten his breakfast of porridge, and he had closed the kitchen door, and he had stepped out onto the grassy verge of the cliff, he began his long, steep, winding route, the path so steep down the cliff. Down, down, down he went to the pebble beach below. There on the pebble ridge was an old wooden boat. Its paint was faded. There were two oars, and he pushed. He had small hands, but they had a wide spread and strong fingers. He wasn't a tall, big man, but he was strong, and he pushed and he heaved and he pushed and he heaved against the bows of that boat until at last its bottom scraped over the round, smooth pebbles and then slipped silently into the sea. Duncan stepped in afterwards and picked up the oars, turned the boat and began to row out into the middle of the bay. The horseshoe-shaped bay. It was early. There was an incoming tide that was rising, covering the kelp that was strewn across the rocks on the shores. It was quiet, barely a breeze. But for a lone seabird, white, circling overhead, its mournful cry filling the air. Duncan rowed out into the middle of that horseshoe-shaped bay. And then he shipped his oars and he drew from his pocket the silver whistle. And he began to play. As he played, dark, rounded shapes began to appear at the mouth of the bay. Great group of seals. Up and down through the water, they carved their passage, getting closer and closer to the wooden boat. Round faces, brown eyes. Close to the boat, there was one particular seal that rose her head out of the water, big brown eyes, long whiskers, a freckled face. She was so big, and it was then that Duncan clasped the bone-handled knife in his lap, wrapped his fingers around it, and he thrust the knife deep into the seal's chest. She let out a mournful cry, and then all her strength she reared out of the water before diving down, just leaving a trail of bubbles on the surface and a trail of blood. Duncan stared as the seal dived, the knife still thrust in its chest, and she disappeared into the water, and he held his head in his hands. My knife! He wailed his loss into the air. The seals that had come with the call of the whistle dispersed. There was just a silent rocking of the boat. After a while, Duncan picked up the oars again and he began to row back to the shore. He dragged the boat up onto the pebble ridge and then began the long, steep, winding cliff path. Up and up he went, until at last he arrived at the top where the white stone-washed cottage stood. He pushed open the kitchen door and he slumped down at a table with his head in his hands. He sat there. He sat there. And he sat there. Time passed. All he could think of, all he could feel was the loss of his knife, the knife that had been passed down from generation to generation, the knife that enabled him to carry out his trade, to survive, to look after himself, to bring in that which he needed. Lost. What would he do without this knife, the bone-handled knife? He sat so quiet, so still, so absorbed in his world of loss and torment, tradition, tradition. He didn't notice that the clouds had begun to gather. He didn't notice when the sky grew leaden. He didn't notice the sun begin to drop. And he didn't know that a big, full, round moon was rising. Clouds, big, heavy clouds gathered. He didn't see, he didn't know, he didn't sense. He didn't know or realize that there was thunder beginning to shake the earth. He didn't notice the wind begin to whistle through the cracks of the cottage or the rain as it began to fall. He didn't notice when the lightning began to flash or the storm broke upon the cliff. It was then, suddenly, just before midnight, that he heard a loud banging at the door. He stood up. His chair scraped across the floor, and he went to the door. He opened it, and the storm almost blew into the kitchen, and there amongst the thunder and the lightning and the rain, there stood a tall man, a tall stranger, wearing a long dark cloak and wearing a wide-brimmed hat. "I'm looking for the seal killer." "Aye, that'll be me." "You're to come with me. My master has a job for you." Duncan reached into the kitchen where his waterproof was hanging on a wooden peg. He pulled the door close behind him. And then it was then that he noticed that behind the tall stranger in the long dark cloak and the wide-brimmed hat, there was a horse, a great horse, black as night, and it stood so still and silent as the storm broke all around them, just its tail. Swish, swish, swish. The stranger got onto the horse and pulled Duncan up behind him, and then they set off. Duncan had never been on a horse before. He had never moved so fast. He could feel the rain like needles in his skin, and everything seemed to bite and roar, and he held on to the stranger with all his might as they galloped and galloped across the top of those cliffs. They galloped through time, through the storm, through that full moon rising. They galloped through it all. They galloped across the earth. And then suddenly, after I know not how long, they came to a standstill on another cliff top. The stranger got down. Duncan followed behind him. He went to the edge of the cliff and peered down. He could see the white horses. He could see the raging, rising ocean, thrashing and throwing itself against the bottom of the cliffs. He could see the storm out to sea. The thunder still rumbled, the lightning still flashed, and the rain came down. And Duncan wondered to himself, what manner of a place is this? What is it that you want from me? Where is your master? Aye, you'll find out soon enough. And with that, the tall stranger in his long dark cloak stepped towards Duncan, who was close to the edge of the cliffs, and he wrapped his arms around Duncan, and then he breathed into Duncan's mouth. And in the same instance, Duncan found himself stepping off the cliff, the two men still clasped in tight embrace, dropping down, down, down from the edge of the cliff, down, down, down. Duncan could hear the wind whistling in his ears, and then smack onto the ocean they landed before they began to sink through the green, murky gloom. First thing that Duncan noticed was how quiet it was. And then he realized to his amazement that he could breathe easily. He could breathe easily. Down, down, down through the green gloom, through the water, down, down to the ocean floor. And it was then that Duncan saw round faces, shadows, moving closer and further away, forms, rounded forms with big, wide, soulful eyes. Seals. As he picked himself up from the seabed, Duncan looked and he saw the tall stranger still wearing his wide-brimmed hat and his dark cloak, and he saw the stranger in his wide-brimmed hat move towards a rock face, and trace a sign, a symbol across the rock, and in that instant the outline of a door appeared. The tall man in his wide-brimmed hat pushed the door inward, and golden light flooded out onto the seabed. The stranger stepped into that place of light, and Duncan followed. He found himself in a great hall with high, vaulted ceilings. There were sconces on the walls, flame for light. Shadows danced, and the space was filled with brown-eyed, weeping people. The tall stranger in his long dark cloak and wide-brimmed hat walked through the crowd of pale-faced, brown-eyed, weeping people, and they let him pass. Duncan followed, and then he saw on the far side of that great hall a door. The stranger had passed from that place into another room beyond, and Duncan followed. It was in that room that Duncan saw, against the wall on the far side, a bed, and lying on that bed was a woman. She had pale skin and dark hair tumbled over her shoulders. Her shoulders were naked, and there was a white linen sheet pulled up, covering her breast. Duncan looked, and he looked. Now, the truth be known, Duncan had not come across many women, and And yet, do we not all know beauty when we see it? And Duncan knew beauty as he looked upon this woman with her dark hair tumbling down over the shoulders. And then he realized that her eyes did not open and no breath seemed to move through her body. And it was then that the tall stranger spoke. "Aye, this is our Selkie queen. And this morning, you stabbed her with that knife." And it was then that Duncan saw it, the bone handle sticking out from her chest, just below her shoulder. Only you can heal her. Only you can save her. You must pull out that knife, seal killer. And you must kiss the wound. Duncan looked up. Under the shadow of that wide-brimmed hat, he saw the cold glint of the tall man that spoke to him so clearly. He wasn't one to argue or question, and besides, he wanted his knife back. And so he knelt down next to where the woman lay, and he wrapped his hands around the handle. Handle and fingers knew each other so well, a dark intimacy and knowing. And then he took a deep breath and he pulled. The knife came out more easily than he expected, and then he rocked back onto his heels, took another breath, and then came forward, and he placed his lips over the gaping wound, and he kissed it. As he opened his eyes and he looked down upon the wound, he saw, wide-eyed with amazement, he saw how the skin and wound began to knit back together again. Right before his eyes, he saw what could only be described as a miracle, as magic, as that gaping, terrible wound healed, closed, until there was no bruise, no blemish, just pure white skin. And it was then that a ripple of movement came through the Selkie queen's body, and he saw her chest rise beneath that linen sheet. And he saw, as he looked down into her face, and her eyes were still closed, but he could see her eyeballs moving beneath her closed lids. And then she opened her eyes and she looked up at him. Their eyes locked. Was it for a moment, or was it for eternity? There seemed to be no time or space. Right, that's enough of that. Duncan broke the gaze as he looked up at the tall stranger in his wide-brimmed hat. "You're to come with me now." And so Duncan stood up and he turned and followed the tall stranger with his wide-brimmed hat out of that room. But just before he crossed the threshold, he turned and he looked back. And as he looked back, he saw the beautiful Selkie queen with her dark hair tumbling over her naked, pale shoulders, and he could sense and feel the softest whisper of a smile upon her lips. Duncan found himself once again in the great vaulted hallway, filled with pale-faced, brown-eyed, weeping people. He followed the tall man with his wide-brimmed hat through to the door where they had come in from the seabed. The tall man peered down at Duncan, a glint in his eyes. "I will only let you go, seal killer, if you promise, if you vow never, ever kill another seal, never hunt another seal. Do I have your promise?" I. You have my word. I will never hunt or kill another seal. And it was then that the tall stranger thrust a heavy leather bag into Duncan's arms, and he opened the door and pushed Duncan out of that space. Duncan found himself on the seabed. He found himself, his lungs felt like they were going to explode as up and up and up through the water he went, the bag heavy in his arms, up and up and up until he thought his lungs would explode. And then suddenly, he found himself breaking water, treading water. And he looked around and he looked up, and the storm had gone. The sky was clear. It was dawn. It was a new day. And there he was in the middle of a horseshoe-shaped bay. And in the distance at the back of the bay were tall, tall cliffs, and reaching up at the top of those cliffs, he saw it, the white stone-washed cottage. And he began to swim. He swam and he swam, still holding on to that heavy leather bag. He swam and he swam until at last he arrived at the pebble beach, and he dragged himself up onto the pebble ridge, and he dragged himself up the winding, steep path that led up and up and up and up to the cliff above. And there was the white stone-washed cottage, and his muscles ached and his bones shrieked, and every cell and sinew in his body was so sore. And still he walked, and still he carried that heavy leather bag, and he pushed open the kitchen door, and he dropped the leather bag, and it caught the corner of the table in the kitchen, and the bag split open, and there was a great shimmering of light and gold and sound as gold sovereigns showered and shimmered onto the floor, spilling out in front of him. Duncan kept his promise. He never did hunt another seal. He was comfortable. The gold helped with that. He never married. He never had children of his own. But there's a story. There's an old story. And that story says that at every full moon, Duncan would leave his white stone-washed cottage and he would take that steep, winding path down to the pebble ridge below. And he would stand on the shore as the great, bright, full moon rose. And he would draw out the silver whistle and he would play. The sound of that seal calling song would reach out across the water and the rising ocean. And distance at the mouth of the bay, a great rounded shape. Seal would cut and carve and swim through the water closer and closer to the pebble shore. And as the seal climbed up onto the shore, the beautiful Selkie woman would step out of her seal skin with her dark hair tumbling over her shoulders. And Duncan would open his arms and the two would dance in sweet embrace. They would dance, the dance of lovers and light and moons and oceans and worlds between worlds. They would dance and they would meet. And then just at that moment between time when the sun begins to emerge and it's like there's a crack of light on the horizon, it was then that the Selkie queen would step back into her seal skin and she would return to her ocean home until the next full. So that was the story of the seal hunter. And there is something that I'm called to invite. This is something new for me, something that I've learned from a wonderful, beautiful storyteller, Josh Shree. He hosts the Emerald podcast. And he invites people after a story to feed the story. And how we do this is we give voice to that part of the story that speaks to us personally. So, for example, if I was to feed this story, I might say, I was the white bird circling overhead. I am the white bird circling overhead. So I am is the beginning, and then it's whatever you feel in you. And just just if you feel called to speak, then just speak into the space. Don't worry if it overlaps with someone else. Just I invite us to feed the story.
And while we're doing that, I'll just I will unpin us maybe so we can see everybody. But if you do not, if you're here on Zoom and you don't want your face to be seen on YouTube, you can just turn off your video if it's not already off. Um, Hang on one second. I'm gonna unpin us. You can just unmute yourself and I could say I am the ocean.
I am the thunder.
I am the gentle smile.
I am the kiss on the wound.
I am the great horse.
I am the light of the moon, the full moon.
I am the whistle that calls to all beings, seen and unseen.
I am the blade being pulled out from the wound.
I am the big, round, brown eyes.
I am the dance and the dancer.
I am the water.
Together, the love.
Sank below the ocean.
I am the wind.
I am the mouth of the bay.
I am the pebbles on the shores meeting the waves lapping upon me.
I am the seal brought back to life.
I am the knife.
I am the seal.
I'll read a few here in the chat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Whoever was speaking, go ahead and speak again.
I am the blade and the silky queen.
Okay, I'll read a few here in the chat. I am the cold water fish watching the silky queen sinking below the waves. I am the fire. I am the cry of the Selkie as she is wounded. I am the healing wound. I am with the seals.
I am the wound and the healing kiss.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for feeding the story with you, with your integrity, your authenticity, your you-ness. Thank you for feeding the story and for being a part of this circle. Thank you. Thank you, story and story ancestors. Thank you, Martha.
Amazing. Yeah. My human brain has all kinds of things, but maybe we can just have another conversation another time. And this was just absolutely perfect. And wow, thank you so much. Well, I can help to close us out. Before we do that, I would definitely love for you to share with everybody. I'm going to be on the YouTube video. I have put Alexandra's contact information, all her links, and I will send it all out in an email, and I'll also put it in our free community space, so you can connect with Alexandra, because you do lots of things, many things, and this was amazing, and I'm sure people would love to keep connected with you. So I will share all of that. But before I close out, is there anything else you feel called to say, or? No. Wonderful. Yeah, this is exquisite. I have so many things I could say, but I want to leave it in that space because I think that's part of the point. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll follow up, I think, with another conversation where we can do the human mind conversation part. But wonderful. Yeah.
I suppose actually there is something that's just,
yeah, go for it.
And that is that what I've learned over the years of working with these ancient narratives, these ancient legends, myths, is that often we can be left with a question about a story, something that doesn't sit comfortably with us, something that we can't figure out and reconcile within our own being. And I would just say that this is the story's medicine for you, if that is something that you experience. And sometimes we don't discover what the answers or resolution are to those questions, but it's the questions themselves that can arise which have meaning for us, and that there isn't a right or a wrong way to interpret these stories. It's so personal to each one of us. And yes, there is a collective wisdom and symbolism, and I could talk about stories and their magic and their healing for days. But, I think, as Martha has said, this is about kind of staying within the space and feeling the story land and noticing where it may not land very comfortably, and taking something from that, receiving something from that.
Yeah. Perfect. And I put some of Alexandra's links here in the chat, also in Zoom, just so it's easy for those of you here on Zoom. But I'll be sending out, it wouldn't let me cut and paste all of them into anyway, for simplicity, it's just a couple of them, but I'll be sending out all of them in an email later today. And yeah, great. Should we close out? Okay. Yeah, and somebody's saying it's their 71st birthday today. So this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I will just say, this is one of my human thoughts is I was noticing as we're being with that story that in terms of this full moon, it's kind of uncanny in a way because the sun right now is in the part of the sky near where Sirius is, the star, and Sirius is the nose of Canis Major, which is one of the two hunting dogs of Orion, the hunter. And in the Greek myth of Orion, right, he becomes a constellation because he was killed by either Artemis or Gaia because he was killing too much. He was out of balance with he was not in right relation with life itself. It was like it's exactly this story. Just another version. And what I love about this story is that there's like there's a resolution. It's not just we kill Orion, it's that the seal hunter has, there's a healing that goes on in it too. So anyway, I won't go into my mind any more than that, but just to say that it's so amazingly perfect. So yeah, that's where the sun is right now at this full moon. Beautiful. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, just feeling everybody here live on Zoom, watching on YouTube, everybody watching this recording. I can just feel the presence of all of us. And I feel like this is really what we're here to be doing, is being together and bridging life back with life. So beautiful, so perfect. Reconnecting all these parts of ourselves, reconnecting in community like this, meeting sun with moon and earth and ocean and land and light and dark and wound and kiss. Reconnecting all these realms and parts of ourselves, and yeah, all the beauty of all of it. So we can feel ourselves being held by the sun and the moon here in our being Gaia, who is land and actually largely ocean. We can feel that we are beings of ocean and land and moon and sun and so much more. And we can feel the gifts of all of it, the healing of all of it. We can feel ourselves again in this sacred circle together in the light of this beautiful, powerful full moon, where the light of the sun is dancing off one side of the moon and mixing with love with us and Gaia and the sacred circle and the seals and all of it. And we can release from ourselves anything and everything from this time together that does not serve each of our absolute radical highest good and the highest good of the all that is, even if it felt great in the moment. Anything that doesn't serve the highest good right this moment can just go straight back to source. And we can allow to anchor in anything and everything that does serve our absolute radical highest good and the highest good of the all that is. We can feel that moonlight, star light, ocean light, even the bioluminescence of ocean meeting the luminescence of cosmos and star being and moon being and sun being and the light of our own beings. We can feel the particles of light that do serve the highest good dancing with all of it. Blessing each of us individually, each of our individual lives. Blessing all of time, all of space. Beyond that, into the void. And blessing everything. And so it is. Amen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all so much, truly, for being here. It feels amazing. Thank you for all that you're sharing in words and beyond words. And thank you, Alexandra. Such a gift. Wonderful. And we'll see you all again soon. Yay. Oops. Just want to see you all for 1 minute here. Yay. Wonderful. Okay. Yeah. And I actually will be holding another free event on August 11th. So I'll be sending out that link soon. So thank you. See you soon. Thank you, Alexandra. Bye.